The full AP Top 25 poll that has, even the receiving votes teams is out. We now know, I alluded to yesterday, the top 10 of the AP poll. But we now know 1 through 25 and 1 through, I think, 42, what people expect and think about the 2024 college football season as we head into it. So these are some of my instant reactions to seeing the AP Top 25. 1 through 5, Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, Alabama. No real surprises there. Maybe Oregon and Ohio State being 2-3 after Ohio State, I think, finished last year 10th in the AP poll after the loss to Missouri. And then Oregon has some question marks, but they're number 3. Number 6 through 10, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Penn State, Michigan, Florida State. There are a lot of SEC schools in the top 25 and in the receiving votes. In fact, there are 10 SEC schools. Of the 16 teams in the conference, 10 of them are in the top 42. And I think it's like the top 30, or no, it's the top 41. Auburn and Kentucky each got 2 votes. Kentucky got 3 votes. Auburn got 2 votes for the top 25. And then you have Texas A&M, Tennessee, LSU, Missouri, Ole Miss, Alabama, Texas, Georgia, also joining Kentucky and Auburn in the top 25. Also, what I think is really interesting is that the ACC appears to be super top heavy, and not even to the level that we thought. That Florida State is the top ACC school, ranked at 10. Clemson is at 14. Miami is at 19. NC State is at 24. Louisville will be 26. Virginia Tech will be 27. And then nobody else receives a vote. Not a vote to be in the top 25. So it looks like that's the opinion of folks, is that, hey, when we go into the season, it is tiers of North Carolina State, Louisville, Virginia in kind of one tier is the, like, they might be able to beat somebody in the top tier. And then it's Miami, it's Clemson, it's Florida State in the expectations of you should be competing for conference crowns. You should be competing for the ACC title. And maybe there are 2 other interesting. There are no non-Power 4 schools ranked in the top 25. And we've gotten away from that in the last 10 years even, where there used to be, like, could you make a strong case for Boise State to be ranked 25 over Iowa? I think so. I think you can make a strong case for Boise State to be ranked over Virginia Tech, Louisville, the teams that are ahead of them. Could you make a case for Liberty? Probably. The idea that there isn't one of those schools ranked in the top 25 or viewed as a top 25 team going into the season, I always feel like does a disservice to Group of 5 football, because, and believe me, I've talked extensively about how the gap is wide. The gap is wide between the Power 4 and even the upper echelon schools in the Power 4 and the Group of 5. But the top part of the Group of 5 is, I think, on par with this little bottoms, the lesser teams in the bottom half of, like, the B tier / C tier schools in the Big 12 and the ACC. The A tier in the American and in the Mountain West are just as good, in my opinion. And we don't get chances to really see that anymore, because the bowl games have become Power 4 versus Power 4, Group of 5 versus Group of 5. Group of 5, the top dogs generally don't get good out-of-conference games against Power 5 schools. It's just they've done everything they can to make sure that we don't get those matchups anymore, because it's embarrassing if Colorado, and that's going FCS, if Colorado loses to North Dakota State, it's embarrassing for Colorado. If Memphis beats Texas A&M It's an embarrassment for Texas A&M. So there is no real great incentive for Power 5 schools to play good Group of 5 schools. So that disconnect becomes wider and wider and wider. And you see it in the top 25, where the top Group of 5 school is ranked at 28. Somebody, and that's as good as it gets. Boise State would be 28. Liberty would be 29, 31. Memphis, UTSA, Tulane, Appalachian State are the only other Group of 5 schools ranked. Somebody from the Group of 5 is going to make the college football playoff. And if it appears as if, there's not a surefire way for that spot to evaporate than by there being teams ranked 1 through 11, and then somebody who's not ranked being the quote-unquote highest ranked Group of 5 champion. Now, I think even we'll get to a point where the college football playoff will rank Group of 5 teams because they can't have an unranked team. So it will be, if Boise State is that representative, if it's Liberty, they'll be ranked 25 at worst. But there's not a faster way to cause uproar and get public perception on your side, because the Group of 5 or the Power 4 doesn't want there to be a Group of 5 spot in a college football playoff. That's not something that they want. It's something they're willing to part with in exchange for those conferences to shut your mouth instead of there, take your money and be quiet. But they don't want that position to be there. But if the public outcry becomes, why in the hell is somebody who's not even ranked making a college football playoff over somebody who might have finished 9-3 and their 3 losses were to teams that are in the top 12? Why in the world are we giving them that spot? So I think you're going to see a concerted effort to not rank Group of 5 schools. Because could you argue that Boise State is better than Arizona or Kansas, or Liberty better than Iowa, USC? Maybe. You should settle it on the field. But even those chances are becoming less and less and less. And maybe the last big takeaway I had was that despite the Group of 5 not being in the top 25, not having a representative, and despite the top 25 being dominated by ACC, SEC, Big Ten, and to a lesser extent, Big 12, where, Utah, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Arizona, there are 5, I think, Big 12 schools, and they are the top one is ranked 12. So 12 through 25, there are 5 Big 12 schools, which is another message to them that, hey, this is how we view you. This is how you are being tabled right now. Is there's a hierarchy: SEC, Big 10, and for right now, slightly ACC, and then Big 12 after that. Every conference has at least one school getting a vote in the top 25, except for the Mid-American Conference. Now, I don't know what that says about them, because I think you could, the Sun Belt has Appalachian State, the American has Memphis, Mountain West has Boise State, the American has UTSA, Tulane, Conference USA has Liberty. The MAC has nobody, if you don't count the zombie version of the Pac-12 with Oregon State and Washington, which I don't think you should. I don't know what that says about the Mid-American Conference, but I think that should make somebody in that office or somebody in one of those coaching staffs go okay, what do we got to do to be viewed as even remotely close to everybody else? And find the answer to that, because you don't, for instance, Miami won the Mid-American Conference last year, should be pretty good again in 2024. But their non-conference is Northwestern, Cincinnati, and Notre Dame, I think. Those are big games where you're a lot of schools will struggle to win one of them. Yeah. At Northwestern, Cincinnati, at Notre Dame. So while Miami might be the best representative to have at least one vote thrown their way, which, for instance, Colorado had one vote thrown their way, for Miami to even be viewed as close to Colorado, it feels like there is just a gulf there that you're never going to be able to surpass. So I think that's also a message being sent to the Mid-American Conference of like, hey, you got to step your game up, or somebody in your conference, whether it's just one team. And that's been kind of the Mac's calling card, right? Is there hasn't been a dynasty in that conference. Boise State just got picked to finish, I think, was it the 17th straight year to win the Mountain West? 14th, 17th, something like that, where it's longer than a decade to be picked to win the conference. I don't know that anybody at the MAC would sign up for that. They were like, yeah, we have this marquee brand because they have seen good programs. Like, people forget that Central UCF used to be in the MAC. Marshall used to be in the MAC. They don't want necessarily to see somebody ascend to that Boise State type level where, should the American need to backfill, should Conference USA maybe start to bolster itself, that there are pickings from the MAC. But at the same time, it can't be literally everybody else has somebody that got a vote except for you. That's an issue. That's a problem. Something to rectify, but it's certainly a message from the college football world to the Mid-American Conference of like, you got to get your house in order. So those are just some of my takeaways, some of the messages being sent from the first AP Top 25. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. Here on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you give the video a thumbs up, it really helps get in front of more college football fans. More college football fans. It's always a good thing. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.